Here's something that should not be true. If you counted every hair follicle on your body and compared the number to a gorilla's, you'd land in roughly the same place. You have about 5 million of them. You are not missing follicles. You are covered, head to toe, in hair right now. It's just that almost all of it has been shrunk down to something so fine and pale you can barely see it. Which reframes the entire question. Humans didn't delete their fur, humans switched it off. And that matters enormously because switching something off is a decision that can be made selectively. Some parts of your body got the shutdown order. A few very specific patches did not. So, this isn't really a story about losing fur. It's a story about a map. Somewhere in our deep past, evolution went over the human body and marked out where hair had to go and where it was allowed to stay. And the strangest survivor on that entire map is a thick tangle of hair that grows on exactly half the population, in exactly one place, starting at exactly one age. Let's find out why the fur went first, because the exceptions only make sense once you understand the rule. Go back 2 or 3 million years, and our ancestors are moving out of shaded forest into open, scorching grassland. And they are doing something almost no other predator does. They're chasing, not ambushing in a short, explosive sprint, but pursuing an animal for hours and punishing heat until it simply overheats and collapses. It's a strategy built entirely on one advantage, staying cool longer than whatever you're chasing, and fur is the enemy of that plan. Fur traps heat against the skin at the exact moment you need to dump it. So our lineage made one of the most radical trades in mammalian history. It gave up the coat and doubled down on sweat. You now carry somewhere between 2 and 5 million sweat glands, one of the highest densities of any animal alive. On bare skin, that sweat evaporates and pulls heat straight off your body. Under thick fur, it just soaks and sits there. Naked skin wasn't a loss. It was a cooling system upgrade. And there's a second theory that runs alongside it, less famous but genuinely persuasive. Fur is a hotel. Ticks, fleas, lice, and mites live in it. And the parasites they carry can kill you. Bare skin means fewer places for them to hide and a much easier time spotting them. Once our ancestors controlled fire and slept beside it and later wrapped themselves in animal skins, they had a way to stay warm at night without needing a permanent coat. So the coat became optional. And when we ask when this happened, the evidence comes from one of the most delightfully gross clues in science: human lice. Body lice can only exist if there is clothing for them to live in, and genetic dating of when they split from head lice tells us that clothing became routine somewhere in the last 100,000 odd years, which means our ancestors were walking around effectively naked for a very long time before they ever covered up. The fur was gone long before we replaced it. So that's the rule. Overheating kills, parasites kill, so the coat had to go. Now the exceptions. Because look closely at where hair survived, and you'll notice something. Every survivor is doing a job. On your head, hair stayed thick and dense, and it's not decorative. It's a sunshade for the one organ that absolutely cannot be allowed to cook. Your brain is enormously heat sensitive, and a standing biped in open grassland takes the sun directly on the top of the skull all day. Dense curly hair is remarkably good at blocking that radiation, while still letting air move underneath. Your eyebrows survived because sweat pouring down a bare forehead goes straight into your eyes, and eyebrows redirected around them like a gutter. Eyelashes stayed to catch dust and trigger the blink reflex. Hair in your armpits and groin survived partly because those regions are packed with a specific kind of sweat gland tied to your personal scent, and hair helps hold and broadcast that chemical signature. So, the map isn't random at all. Hair stayed exactly where hair was useful. Shade the brain, protect the eyes, carry the scent. Every exception has a job. And then there's the beard, which fails every single one of those tests. A beard doesn't shade your brain. It doesn't protect your eyes. It sits on the lower face over some of the largest blood vessels near the skin's surface, which is precisely where a heat-stressed animal wants to be releasing warmth, not trapping it. It gives parasites the one dense habitat we supposedly spent millions of years eliminating. It gets in the way of eating. In a hot climate, it is an actively bad idea. And notice how badly it breaks the pattern. Every other patch of surviving hair appears on everyone, male and female, from childhood, in every population on Earth, because a sunshade and an eyebrow are things all humans need. The beard obeys none of that. It shows up on one sex, arrives late, and varies wildly between populations, thick and heavy in some, sparse in others. That distribution is a fingerprint, and it points away from survival entirely. It also arrives on a suspicious schedule. It doesn't appear at birth. It appears at puberty, mostly in males, and it keeps thickening for years afterward. Nothing that's solving a temperature problem behaves like that. So, whatever the beard is for, it clearly isn't survival. Charles Darwin ran headfirst into this same wall in 1871, and he's the one who proposed the way out. Maybe the beard was never selected for keeping men alive. Maybe it was selected for getting them chosen. That's a completely different engine, and it can produce features that are useless, awkward, or even harmful, as long as they win attention. A peacock's tail slows it down and makes it easier to catch, and it exists anyway. Some traits aren't tools, they're advertisements. And the beard is an unusually honest one. Facial hair growth is driven by testosterone and, crucially, by androgen receptors packed unusually densely into the skin of the jaw and chin. That means the beard is a visible readout of an invisible internal process. It tells you the man in front of you has been through puberty, is past a certain age, and has a body responding to those hormones. You cannot fake it quickly, and you cannot rush it. In a small group where you had seconds to size up a stranger, a face was a summary you could read across a clearing without saying a word. But here's the twist that modern research keeps running into, and it's not the one most people expect. When scientists show people images of the same men clean-shaven and bearded, one result comes back consistently, and one absolutely does not. Beards reliably raise ratings of dominance, age, maturity, and social status. But ratings of pure attractiveness are all over the map, changing between studies, cultures, and individuals, which suggests something quietly fascinating. The beard's primary audience may never have been potential partners at all. It may have been other men. A signal aimed sideways, at rivals, saying full-grown, established, not worth the fight. Intimidation is a form of winning that doesn't require anyone to find you handsome. There's a supporting clue in the geometry, too. Some researchers have pointed out that a dense beard adds bulk exactly along the jawline, cushioning the single most common target in a fistfight. Not armor, and the evidence is far from settled. But in a world where arguments were resolved with fists, a little padding over the jaw was never going to be selected against. And there's one final twist that explains something you've watched happen in your own lifetime. Researchers have found evidence of what they call negative frequency dependence. Put simply, beards become more appealing when they're rare, and less appealing when everybody has one. When clean-shaven faces dominate, a beard stands out and gains value. When beards flood the culture, the advantage evaporates and smooth faces start climbing again. That's not a fixed setting. That's a signal whose worth depends entirely on what everyone else is doing, which is why beards go in and out of fashion in waves, decade after decade, century after century, and why there has never been a permanent answer to whether they look good. The trait was never designed to be universally attractive. It was designed to be noticed. So, here's the whole picture. Our ancestors stripped away their coat because heat and parasites were killing them, and bare skin plus sweat let a slow, weak animal chase things to death under the sun. But the shutdown wasn't total. Hair stayed wherever it was, earning its keep, shading the skull, guarding the eyes, carrying scent. And then, on one patch of one face on roughly half the population, evolution kept something that had no survival job at all, purely because it said something loud about the person wearing it. Which means, when you stand at a mirror with a razor, you're not doing grooming, you're editing a broadcast. That patch of hair is the last surviving piece of the coat we abandoned 2 million years ago. Kept alive not because it protects you, but because for 100,000 generations, it was the fastest way to tell a stranger who you were before you opened your mouth. Every morning, you get to decide whether to send that message. Your ancestors never had that choice.